Hello and welcome back to my channel, and in this video we're going to go over some tips for job interviews. Okay, so as you've probably seen, we already have videos on this channel for CV writing, cover letters, networking, LinkedIn, creating a portfolio, etc. But we don't yet have the interview video. So today is the time for that. So we're actually going to start all the way before the interview starts. Okay, so what I mean by that is planning your journey, simple as it sounds. So make sure you obviously don't want to be late to this interview. So it depends how you're traveling. Are you driving there? Plan your route. Make sure you know where you're going. If you're having to use trains and buses, etc., plan the route to make sure you are giving yourself enough time to get there on time. And when I say on time, my personal preference, I would normally say arrive there sort of 10 minutes earlier. So not too early, so you suit overly keen, but obviously you don't just want to be getting there on the dot. If your interview starts at 10 o'clock, for example, I would be arriving in the waiting reception or wherever at sort of 10 minutes to 10, 15 minutes before the interview. Obviously it shows that you're prompt, you're on time, and obviously that is all doable by planning the route beforehand. Okay, so the next one is pretty obvious, but you'll be surprised by the number of people that don't adhere to this, and that is to dress smart. So, you don't have to go in a full tuxedo or anything like that, but, I would wear some smart trousers and a shirt at a minimum. And then obviously if you want to wear a sort of tie and a jacket as well, that is great. But as a minimum, definitely wear a shirt, I would say. It just, shows that you're making an effort and you are looking at the part and you are interested in getting this job. Okay, so you've planned the route, you've got there in good time, and you're looking very, very smart. So the interviewer calls you in, so this is kind of where the fun begins. So the first thing I would say is you want to be polite. Obviously, you want to shake the person's hand and you want to make eye contact. You want to make them know that you do have a level of confidence. You're happy to be there and you're looking forward to start the interview. As you would expect, first impressions count, so that's why obviously that's really important, but also that extends to the first few minutes of the actual interview itself. So obviously the first impression of the handshake, the eye contact is great, but then obviously come across well as well. So be positive, in any kind of initial small talk at the start of the interview, and obviously then try your best to come across confidently and show the fact that you are happy to be there and you really, really want that job. So one thing to note here is that they wouldn't have invited you to the interview if they weren't a little bit impressed. So they've obviously seen your CV or they've seen your profile on LinkedIn or whatever you've sent in for the application, and they've liked what they've seen in order to then say, okay, let's take this guy to the next step and let's invite them in for an interview. So really, they're not, as much as it may seem that they're trying to trip you up with questions, they are actually wanting you to succeed. They've invited you there for a reason. So obviously just kind of remember that in your head. So they're not there, they're not your enemy or anything like that. They are, they've shown an interest, and it's about you then portraying what you can do for those guys in terms of what skills can you bring to that particular team or organization. Okay, so next thing I will say is what you should bring. So again, this is up for interpretation. I would say it can't do you any harm to take a copy of your CV, or in fact a couple of copies. There might be a couple of people on the interview panel, and they would usually have their own copy, but if they haven't, just in case, then you can obviously hand a copy of your CV over to them as well. I would also say that it's a good idea to take a little notepad. Just doesn't have to be anything big, just a little notepad and a pen, so you can make any notes from the interview as well. But also it will help you, so we'll come on to it at the end, is when they ask you if you've got any questions. Sometimes you might get a little bit nervous and you might have had a question but you've forgotten about it, or it's just gone out of your mind. If you've got them questions down in the notepad that you've kind of come up with beforehand and before the interview, then at least when you come to that part of the interview, you can say, yeah, actually I do have a couple of questions, and then you can get your notepad out. Obviously it's not going to be a massive list, could just be one or two questions, and then you can refer to your notepad and ask them questions to get the relevant answers that you're actually looking for. Okay, so quick break before we move on. I do want to quickly ask you to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, give the video a like. There's also a link down below. I've now started a free newsletter where I will be sharing weekly emails completely free with tips on the sports industry, how to get a job, interviews with other people, etc., and other kind of interesting topics. So that's totally free. You can sign up in the description below. Like I say, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let's get cracking with the next tip. Okay, so this one goes for actually the whole kind of process of applying for a job. This is obviously mentioned in the cover letter as well, and technically the CV. So definitely research the company or the team that you are there getting interviewed by, for example. So know what they do, what they're known for example. Maybe you know someone that works there already. Are there any links or any common ground? Because you can obviously lean on them. So without being too stalkerish, you can do a little bit of research on the person that is going to be interviewing you if you know that beforehand. So maybe they've worked with someone else that you've worked with before, and you can lean on that and try and build some rapport between the interviewer if there's any kind of common ground on that regard. What I will say on this is never badmouth any previous employers. So if they're looking at your CV and notice you've worked somewhere else and they ask you why you left or why you're not there anymore, for example, don't, no matter how that ended, it is very unprofessional to start badmouthing another company. And for all you know, the person that is interviewing you might actually know somebody or know your old boss, for example. And if you're then, badmouthing them, that's not going to go down well, and it's overall just unprofessional. Okay, so the next thing I will say is try to be conversational. Obviously, you will be nervous. It's natural to be nervous in this situation, but just try to take your time when answering questions, and then try and kind of get your personality across a bit, because that's what they want to see effectively. Your CV is there, it tells them what skills you've got, and obviously as long as you're not lying, they kind of know that you're at this stage of the process anyway, they'll know you're probably qualified on paper for the job. They also, they want to see how you come across. They want to know if you'll be a decent fit and you'll get on with other people within that team. So try to make the whole interview process conversational. You don't want it to just be, they ask a question, you give an answer, they ask a question, you give an answer. You can turn it into more of a conversation. It will relax the whole atmosphere and it will help you to succeed, I would say. Okay, moving on. So there's no harm in actually researching common interview questions. So if you go on the internet, you can actually literally type in common interview questions, and you can actually plan for them basically by contextualizing it to the role that you're going for. So obviously you're not going to have them scripted and know the answer off by heart, but if you know that the interviewer might ask you some particular question, you have an idea of how to answer that, that's going to help you then become more relaxed, and it's not going to mean that you're going to be caught off guard in the interview process, for example. So one thing on this as well is sometimes, interviewers do like to ask, what's your biggest weakness? Don't say that you're a perfectionist or you work too hard. It's not a very good answer. Again, do research beforehand, but there's much better answers than that, for example, that you can say. So definitely research the questions. Like I say, on the internet, if you look, it might not be related to sports analysis or sports science or whatever, but the questions are quite similar over the board. So if you've got an idea going in what they might ask you, you might research and they might not ask you those questions, but if you've got an idea of what could come up, at least then if it does come up, you will be better prepared. Okay, so moving on, and another thing that you can plan beforehand is obviously your skills. You've got them down in your CV, but you're in this room, this interview, so it might last 20 minutes to an hour, for example. So you've got this opportunity, so you don't want to waste it. So you do want to sell yourself. You want to prove to them why you are the right fit for the job. And to do this, you can talk about what you've done previously, but not just keep banging on about previous jobs. Kind of relate them to the current position. So if you've done certain things in a previous job with special skills, for example, how can those skills and what you learned in that previous job relate to this current job, and how will that benefit these current employees here right in front of you? So definitely don't be afraid to sell yourself. You need to get across why you're right for this job. If you want the job in the first place, don't just go in there, sit very timid, answer minimal answers and stuff like that, because you won't get the job if you're not showing that you actually want the job in the first place. So definitely don't be afraid to sell yourself. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier on, at the end of the interview, they will kind of ask you if you've got any questions. These can be planned beforehand, but make sure they are worthwhile questions. Don't ask when your dinner hour is or anything like that. So you want to have these planned out, and again, don't worry if you do forget about them. You can refer to your notes. It's going to show that you're organized and you've got stuff written down beforehand, so you can always refer back to them when it gets to that point in the interview. So overall, I will say, and I will reiterate, in fact, that they are wanting you to succeed. They're not just there to try and catch you out. If you do the preparation, you do the research, and you can plan, obviously you can even try and do mock interviews with a family member before you go, for example, just to kind of get you used to sitting across from someone and answering the specific questions that they're going to ask. Make sure you know everything that is on your CV. Obviously, it goes without saying, do not lie on your CV or your cover letter, because it would only come to bite you in the arse. They might ask you a certain question about something in your cover letter, and if you can't even remember what you put, then that's not good. So again, make sure you're up to scratch on what you did include in your actual application. Okay, so apart from that, like I say, just try not to be too nervous. It's natural that you will be, but try and kind of calm yourself down and just be yourself in the interview. That's what the interviewer will want to see. They want to see how you come across and how you can kind of get along with other people in the team. But other than that, good luck. Obviously, interviews will be coming up soon as the kind of more and more jobs are kind of coming out. So you've got all the videos on this channel, like I said, so you can master your CV to be able to get the interview in the first place. But once you're in that position that you've got the interview, it's important that you take your chance and obviously do the best you can. Okay, so that's enough for this video. As I say, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also give the video a like. Thanks again for watching and have a great day.